Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of 57% True. My name is Jason, your host, and we have a familiar guest if you've listened to previous episodes here. Luckily enough, I was able to get Amy to do another episode with me. She decided to slum it, God bless her, and hang out with me for another hour. So everybody say hi, Amy, to everybody out there. She's not going to say anything now.
Oh, sorry. Hi. That was my cue.
That's all right. She's over there doing more important things, I'm sure. But so no, Amy's going to join us again. We're going to talk about something pretty important and that mainstream media isn't covering a lot of right now, it seems like. So we kind of wanted to touch on it, especially since it's kind of near to her right now. But basically what we're going to start on today is there's a lot of anti-Asian hate crimes going on. And with all the BLM stuff and everything going on, COVID, everything, there doesn't seem to be a lot that's really being covered in the media about it. It's starting to gain some momentum, which we'll talk about that here, but because it's pretty important, I really want to kind of dive right into it. So I know you've been doing some research, you've been doing a little bit of reading, and like we mentioned off mic, you said that you've been watching videos and seeing some stuff, and it's pretty disturbing. So do you want to start with kind of what you have been seeing and what you've been reading and kind of go from there?
Sure. Well, the first part is I don't have cable TV anymore, so I don't watch any sort of news.
Good for you.
I get most of my news actually reading online news. I tend to read BBC News a lot for some reason. I'm not a big fan of some of the major U.S. newspaper online sites. I read a handful, but I tend to read the international just to get a different point of view, and then also like see what kind of coverage there is around the world as well. But just randomly scrolling through social media, and all of a sudden I started seeing these videos of these Asian hate crimes. And the one that caught my eye was an older gentleman getting shoved on the sidewalk by, it looked like a black guy walking by. And I'm thinking, what the heck? Why? Right. He's an older guy. He's not in your way. The sidewalks aren't packed. You just shoved him and kept going. And the one video I did watch basically reported several hate crimes within a week. And then just doing a little bit more research, hearing how these have been ongoing since the pandemic. I've heard about it. I mean, it also doesn't help that our previous president called it the China virus, the Wuhan flu. I don't know, a bunch of derogative names. Kind of annoying.
So yeah, that was the articles that I was reading. They definitely talked about how a lot of Asians had felt in the culture that calling it that was kind of lending levity, whatever you want to call it, to enabling this and making it quote unquote okay for these kinds of things. And I can kind of see that where, if you're calling it a certain thing and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, well, these jackasses brought it over here. It's like, no, stop it. Like, come on. And when the video that I saw, the one that you were talking about, was very upsetting because it's on the street corner through security cam footage, and you just see this elderly gentleman minding his own business, and a guy walks up right behind him, and I mean shoves, not just a body check or a shoulder or whatever, but both hands, shoves him and just continues walking as if he was taking a drink of a Coke. Completely unprovoked. There was absolutely no reason for it. Like you said, it's not like the sidewalks were busy. It was a bright sunny day. There was no reason for it. And a lot of these things that you and I have seen, they all are unprovoked. There was one that happened with an older woman. She was standing outside of like a deli, and she asked a gentleman that was coming out something about the line. And I don't know if he was having a bad day, don't know if he was just a raging racist, but he just started screaming at her, shoved her so hard that she got stitches in her head because she hit a newspaper box. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And one of the odd twists of that was the woman, the victim, her daughter was actually friends with the actor Olivia Munn. And so she used her clout and Twitter and everything like that. They were able to find him. But that was the one that was actually just recently released, no bail, and is quote unquote under supervision. And the media have no idea what in the world that even means. I don't even know what that means. I mean, does that mean he's under surveillance with cameras? Does he have someone sitting with him? I don't know. But for something like that, that really burns me for multiple reasons, especially when we're talking race and something unprovoked. And if it really was just an innocent question, which I'm sure it was, why in the world did this person think that it was totally fine to do? Was that one that you had seen?
That one I just saw right before we started this.
Yeah. And that's the one that I'm currently in a Twitter feud on right now, which is hilarious. So check out my Twitter at 57% true, and then you can see all the craziness happening there. But we had talked about a couple things within the culture of why you think it may be happening, not just, calling it China virus and things like that. But to give a couple quick stats, since March through the end of the year 2020, hate crimes against Asians have gone up 1,900%, which is crazy. And it's not the couple that I had seen before were in the San Francisco area, but the latest one was New York. Wasn't that right? What you'd seen? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So 1,900%, that's disturbing to see that kind of a rise. And we can maybe get into other races and things like that later when it comes to it. But from your viewpoint, you had said within the culture there, you might think that there's reasons why. Like, what were those reasons?
So just personally growing up, we were told to accept things and not really say anything, like speak up. Mm-hmm. Like, for instance, if I saw something wrong and if I were to say something, the whole culture side was, oh, you didn't raise your children right. It's kind of like, so imagine you demanding something and you didn't say your please or thank yous, mm-hmm. right? And they would put the blame on the parents because the parents didn't teach that sense of courteousness, right? Mm-hmm. So same thing with like certain things in Chinese culture. Let's say if we didn't address our elders correctly, the blame would be put on the parents. Like, I didn't know that growing up. I accidentally addressed one of my cousins by their first name, and it's a respect thing. Like, you're supposed to call them like big brother this or big sister this or auntie and uncle this. Like, you never call anyone by their first names. Mm. I didn't know that. It has to be taught, right?
Right.
So I got chewed out because I didn't know. I made my corrections, and I still address my elders properly. I don't call anyone by their first names. I also know. I don't know if it's a female thing or if an Asian thing, but like there are certain times where I would speak up, and it was looked down upon, especially when I was younger. I'm not sure why. Again, I don't know if it's a culture thing or a respect thing, but I know I was scolded by my mom. But as over the years, I'm not sure if it's because I'm older now, I'm an adult, more established adult, or maybe because what I say, I can do what I want to also protect my parents. Mm-hmm. I don't get as much backlash. And I'm not sure why, if it's an adult thing or if it's they've had a change of mind on the culture side.
Yeah,
I also know, that's the other thing that goes back to like not speaking up, not saying anything. Mm. So even though you were saying it was 1,900%?
Yes.
So I think that number might actually be higher.
I would think so. And yeah, go ahead.
And again, going back to the culture thing, there are times where we just let stuff slide. It's just too much of a hassle to deal with, like going to the police or, putting on file, like reporting it, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. Part of it might even be the language barrier. Like, who would actually believe what I say if I can barely get my words out?
Yeah. Yeah. And within the culture, it seems like, and again, a lot of this is seen or learned from television movies. You see the stereotypes of, Asians of handling things within the culture or within the family, or like you said, there's honor in, making sure that you're addressing people correctly and whatnot. So I definitely would agree with you when you say that 1900, while that is a huge number, it seems to me that it probably would be much, much higher, especially with what you had just mentioned as well.
So I'm curious on who actually did the reporting, if it was more of the people like my age or the actual older like my parents' generation. I could definitely see it from my point of view, or even younger, because growing up in the US is different than growing up in China. And we've definitely acclimated to, being vocal and, being loud and obnoxious sometimes too. But that's a stereotype of Americans, by the way.
Capricious youth. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been told that too. So, but yeah, definitely saying something, like being more vocal. I mean, your typical, culture wise, like your typical parents want you to be like, say, a doctor or a lawyer or something successful, like something that'll, have a good salary. Growing up, you never saw actors or actresses, comedians. You never saw something like outside of like the STEM type occupations.
Right. Yeah.
And you see more of it now, which is kind of nice to see. Who was I talking to? I think one of the guys in my class. We were talking about how it was a nice change to see a Disney cartoon with an Asian character, the original Mulan.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa. Even though he wasn't Chinese, he's like, well, it was some sort of Asian representation, and it was nice to see something different produced by Disney.
Well, that, and especially with that representation not being stereotypical. So, yeah. And there's plenty of examples of older movies and things like that where they use, the stereotype with Asians, Chinese culture, things like that. Breakfast at Tiffany's is a big one. I don't know if you're familiar with that movie or not, but
you're gonna be mad at me. I've never seen it.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
It's an old movie. It's the movies like that don't hold up. Yes, it's a classic, but for people like us to watch movies like that would be kind of, you almost have to be a film major to get into it. But there was a stereotypical Asian person that was played by Mickey Rooney, who of course is white. And there was a lot of, back then it was like, well, it was fine, but now it's just like, are you crazy? Like, why in the world would you think that would be okay to do? But yeah, no, it's definitely nice, and it is nice to see things not so stereotypical, which we'll get to that at the end, I think, too, a little bit. But anyway, so you were saying not only being generational, but also gender almost. Yeah, like you were saying.
Gender, cultural. I'm not sure if it's like that with the other Asian cultures. I can only go by what I've grown up with. I think maybe in the Japanese culture too, at least what I've observed, like the females tend to be more quiet. They don't really speak out. I don't know about the younger generation though. The younger generation tends to dress like anime characters and just hang out on the streets all day. That's my impression of them. But
so a couple things. There was an article in Time, just so that way you don't think I'm just pulling garbage off of the internet. But they were talking about how Asian Americans tend to have what they call, or what is perceived as, quote unquote, class privilege, and what they call the quote unquote model minority. Have you heard of anything about that?
I have.
Okay.
And I can see that.
Okay. So
I can see why they have that image.
So to kind of explain the whole model minority for those who may not be familiar with it, it's basically, as a quote in Time, there's a stereotype and an assumption that Asian Americans have class privilege, that they have high socioeconomic status and education, and that any discrimination doesn't really happen or feel legitimate. There are these assumptions about ways that Asian Americans have, quote unquote, succeeded in this country. So how do you feel as far as that goes, either portrayed or actual life.
It's definitely false. I mean, we grew up really poor. I know that for a fact. But yeah, I mean, especially in LA, yeah, the pockets of the certain neighborhoods, yeah, there's some Asian families that are really, really well off. But then I mean, it's just like any other culture or race or country. I mean, you have the well off and you have the ones that are struggling. I mean, I don't know where that stereotype came from, but it's definitely not true.
Well, so later in the article, they talk about how the wage gap or the earning gap, as far as families and everything, it's actually the greatest within the Asian culture. Like, like the median wealth and whatever. Like, there's huge pockets of poverty among Asian Americans, and yet at the same time, they are on the completely opposite end of the spectrum as well. Doing well for themselves and things of that nature. The article did state that there's a lot of flawed media representation, like Crazy Rich Asians, this new bling empire that's on Netflix, that's kind of glamorizing the Asian American, hey, we made it kind of thing.
Oh wait, is that the one with the Vietnamese family?
I think that's the one.
Yeah,
I'll be honest.
I heard about that and I started laughing. And I'm like, really? This is not a good representation of people over here. Not everyone has it made and not everyone lives like that.
Right. And I need to correct myself. I said wage gap. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about, I'm sorry, is the income inequality gap. There we go. So I misspoke there. But they were talking about that Asian immigrants have the highest poverty rates in the city, which the city they were talking about was New York City. So yeah, you have these large pockets of poverty, and yet a lot of people that can do, really well as well. So there's a wide range. The one that we were talking about, the 91-year-old man who was pushed down in Oakland, well, to kind of get into that first, so there was talk about policing and why they think that wouldn't be the answer to fixing these anti-Asian hate crimes. And while they were trying to do something good, Daniel Dae Kim and Daniel Wu, both fantastic actors in their own right, they actually went on to Twitter offering $25,000 for a reward that anyone that could provide information leading to the arrest and conviction of the attacker. And this attacker actually also did this to other people as well, 60-year-old man, 55-year-old woman, which is crazy too, that why they would pick on older people, but we'll get to that after a minute because I have some thoughts on that myself. Some people were like, yes, this is exactly what needs to do, because like you were saying, a lot of times there's a lot of silence when things like this happen, but there were people that were actually frustrated and upset about them going on there, and it said, how to tackle anti-Asian violence without relying on law enforcement institutions, and because they've been historically targeting black and brown communities. And someone said, listen, if you don't understand why it's problematic to offer $25,000 for information about a black man in Oakland, I need you to stay off all the GD panels. This was a quote by someone else. And I don't like saying that word, even though I cuss like a sailor. So, yeah, and he goes on to say, it looks like you're putting a bounty on a black person's head.
But how is that any different than like them posting like the FBI most wanted? If you
Correct.
have information leading to the arrest of this male, this female, they could be black and white pictures. I don't care.
Right.
If you can do whatever like, that's no different. Like, it's not like we're targeting blacks right now. We're targeting, and can I say asshole?
Yeah, you can say whatever the hell you want.
Yeah. So, like, the way I see it, that guy could be my grandfather, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be anybody's grandfather, right? It could be your grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you want to attack the elderly? I don't care what color he is. You're attacking the elderly.
Right.
There is no reason to do that.
Well, Jess and I talked about that, and it's like, of anybody on this planet, in my opinion, the elderly really should just be hands off. There's absolutely no reason. They've lived their life. They've done, you know what I mean? And now it is time for them to just relax, unwind.
Exactly.
I mean, if they want to go out and do things, obviously, I'm not trying to say, you know, elderly's got to be shut in a box somewhere and be like, all right, time to die. I just mean, you know, they've done so much with their lives. Now is time for them to take a load off and enjoy. And then to be completely unprovoked attacked from the behind. I mean, that's the other thing that blows my mind. What an asshole. There's no reason for it. So, but
my only other excuse is you can't pick on someone your own size, so you pick on someone smaller than you.
yes.
And like just to make yourself feel big. I was like, you're an ass. That's all I can say.
Right. So, and there's only been a couple that I have looked at. I am not making a gross generalization over the couple that I have seen. I need to say that before I say this. The ones that I have seen have been perpetrated by either Black or Latin, Latino, Hispanic, whatever you want to say. But the 2 of the 3 that I saw were perpetrated by Blacks. And I'm wondering if, because all this started happening during like the COVID movement, the BLM stuff and whatever, if they're just so insanely frustrated that that's the only way that they know how to act out, or is it that they feel more empowered because of all the BLM movement stuff and they know that they've already done so much without getting any consequences that they're like, fuck it, I'll just do this too. You know what I mean? Like, that's my curiosity. Now, again, I'm not saying that only Blacks did this. I'm saying that the ones that I've seen, that's what it was. I'm sure there are asshole white people out there too beating up grandmas, and that's not cool either. So I'm wondering, is it just the stress of the situation of life because of, you know, being on lockdown and wearing masks and all this stuff, or is it really just people being jackasses?
Well, I'm going to tell you something which I haven't even talked about in a long time. So,
okay.
I know growing up, the viewpoint on Blacks was tended to be negative, and I have no idea why. So I would hear comments like, let's say a Black guy they were doing the news and a Black guy is getting arrested or something like that. The first thing I would hear would be, oh, he's probably just robbed another bank, or he's done some sort of crime. Like making the assumption that all Black people are bad.
This was at home?
This was at home.
Okay.
And I've had to change that viewpoint that not all Blacks are the same, right? Mm-hmm. You just happen to see the ones across the news, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, there are people who rob banks all the time, right?
Sure.
They could be any color. Maybe they didn't get caught. Maybe they didn't get reported. The news tends to report stuff that will catch the people's eyes, the viewpoints, right? Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, like I said, I had to break that stereotype with my mom growing up. I don't know if it had to do like some cultural. She's a lot better now, but growing up, it was. I hated hearing it because it wasn't true. Mm-hmm. She also did not think much of like white people either, and I had to break those stereotypes as well. Mm-hmm. But with like Chinese people, they can't do anything wrong. It's the model minority, right?
Yeah.
So
right.
I was allowed to hang out and come home late if I was hanging out with Chinese people. But if it was anybody else, I had to be home by a certain time. Mm. And do you remember why I was never able to go to any of your fireworks things?
I do, yep.
Because you guys are white. That's pretty much it. I'm sorry.
Nope, I know. Believe me, I know.
But yeah, that stereotype sucks. And it's not true.
Yeah.
I mean, that can be with anybody. I mean, there's bad people everywhere and there's good people everywhere. That's the way I see it.
Of course.
It just happens, the news happens to report like a certain type of news all the time, and the generalization happens to be there.
Well, yeah, the squeaky wheel always gets the grease, right? So, I mean, and there was, I hate Michael Moore. I hate him. However, he did a movie that was called Bowling for Columbine, which talked a lot about, you know, the Columbine school shooting. But he actually walked around and was talking with different people in the media about, you know, what what decisions go into what stories that you do. He's like, couldn't you do like a nice piece about a family that did this, or, you know, someone adopted a dog? And they're like, well, yeah, but where are the ratings in that? Nobody wants to see that. And you can't argue about, hey, they just adopted a dog. You know, it's all about, you know, well, this person shot this person, or this blah, blah, blah. And he was actually out on location filming his own thing when there was a news crew out, and he was watching them do all this stuff, and they were sensationalizing it right there. I mean, it's already bad enough, and then here they are making it, you know, into this even worse situation, and it's disgusting to watch. And I mean, this was back in, what, that would have been mid-90s, I think. And even then, right. Yeah, that was the beginning of my hatred for mainstream media. It wasn't all this stuff that's happening now. Now it's just kind of solidifying it, in my whatever experience. But I understand, you know, without ratings, they don't make money. But at the same time, what are you doing to the population when you start running these stories and sensationalizing things and painting people in a certain light? Just as an example, the stories that you and I both read, did you see anything in there? If you didn't watch the video or see a picture, would you have known what race the person was that perpetrated the issues by reading the article?
Oh, well, I mean, they called him out specifically. But no, the other guy, I did not know, the New York one. Mm-hmm. I just saw, like, they just reported the Asian woman, but they didn't mention anything about the guy. And then the original one in Oakland, I don't think I would have picked up on race if I didn't watch the video.
So, exactly. And what I mean by that is they're not going to say what that race is, because here's the thing. It really doesn't matter what race they are. They're an asshole. So, you know, like we said, they come on all flavors, right? So it doesn't matter what race they are. I can guarantee you, though, if it was a crime that was a white on black, it would have been, you know, white person did this to black person or whatever. But that's because it's hitting that media, whatever they're trying, that agenda that they're pushing. And that's what's frustrating. Why push an agenda like that when we're already having race issues as it is? Just say, this asshole beat up this elderly man, go find him so we can punish him. I don't, that it bothers me. Mm-hmm. It's good to know, though, as horrible as this may sound, I think you'll understand what I mean when I say it. It's good to know, though, that there are these crimes that are happening against Asians, meaning I'm not taking pleasure that they're happening to Asians. What I mean is it's good to know that there is a problem within that community, especially since you were saying a lot of it doesn't go reported. So knowing that there's a 1900% jump, that number has to be astronomical. So it's good to know that it's happening. And I don't understand why mainstream media isn't covering it, other than it doesn't fit their agenda, because this is something that's very important. If someone is being targeted either by race or by religion or whatever, it needs to stop. Point blank. I don't care who you are or what you are. I'm very libertarian that way. Just do your thing, leave me alone, and we'll get along just fine. So it's heartbreaking to see, and I don't want to push media to really, you know, get into it. But at the same time, you yourself didn't even know.
Nope.
And, you know, that's what, when I started reading about that stuff, I started seeing a couple of them, and I was like, this is so weird. Why isn't this making news? And I was like, not hitting the agenda. But you yourself didn't even know, and that's got to be frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, I read the news occasionally, but it's not like I have cable TV anymore, like I said, to have to listen to the background. But whatever I do read, I want to know what's going on. But a lot of the news is just so badly reported, like I don't want to read it.
Right.
And it just, but yeah, there's also really bad writing. And that's another thing I don't want to read either. That's a separate story. But
right.
No, like there's certain U.S. news outlets I refuse to read because their writing style is just horrible. So
yes, actually, we can hit on that here in a minute. I want to take just a quick break, but after that, we're going to talk about how the media sucks and they can't write stuff very well. So give us just about 60 seconds or so, and we'll be right back. All right, thanks for listening to the ad there. I am here once again with my good friend Amy, and we're talking about how kind of the lighter side of races and and how you can have fun with that kind of deal. You know, it's not always doom and gloom and racism and whatever. I mean, it's fun to kind of joke about our stereotypes and all this good stuff. So, because Amy and I worked together when we were younger, there was some fun stuff there. And then you said, you know, things with you and your friends you used to joke around about. Like, what was that kind of stuff?
Mostly commenting on my size. Like, I'm the last one to know that it rains because I'm so short.
Well, so how tall are you?
5'2".
Yeah, that's the same height as my mom.
But apparently that's really short to everyone around because
Sure.
I'm the short, like even at work, I'm the shortest one in the group. We were working on ship one day, and the guys I was working with, they're like, "Where'd you get your steel-toe boots from? Baby Gap?" Because they had never seen steel-toe boots that small. Do you know how hard it is to find steel-toe boots, like women's steel-toe boots in my size?
Yeah.
Because I was thinking, oh, I could buy a guy's size, right? Steel-toe boots. Because steel-toe boots back then, they weren't really catered to like females.
Yeah.
So you had to buy like guy stuff, which is fine because they're just boots. No, they don't make them that small for guys. So I found out that way. And then, but yeah, like finding stuff for my size is difficult. I remember they didn't have petite sizing back then. So that's how I learned to sew, was to hem up all my pants.
Really?
And yeah. See my sewing machine?
I was going to say, I see it there, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's more accommodating now, but like back then it was hard to find like, you know, stuff catered to like females or stuff for my size. But yeah, my size was always a joke, except for when I went to China. They're like, "Oh, you're a good height for a female." I'm like, I wish it was the same in the US, but not so much.
Right.
But yeah, the only other instance I really remember was working at Best Buy with one of the guys at work, and he would always give me the red M&Ms. And I finally had to ask him, why the red ones? Because you're a commie. I like looked at him. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm American. Like every time a package of M&Ms was opened up, I would get the red ones.
And without being, you know, without giving away the name or anything, because, you know, but he was just one of those, like, devious jerks. Like, it was all in good fun, but he always had that shit-eating grin on his face, you know what I mean? Like, he was always up to something. And the first time I remember him doing that to you, oh my gosh, it was funny. But
I mean, it was all in fun, which, I mean, I took it, and I'm fine with it. Right. But let's say if it was some random stranger, yeah, I would be totally offended.
Well, of course. But that's where I guess, you know, I kind of wanted to bring that up. So, like, my best friend is Hispanic, and every time I, you know, get a new car, his joke is he gets in my car and he was, you know, stares at my car stereo like he's going to steal it. And then he also blames me for, you know, because I'm German. He's always like, you know, don't start another world war. And it's fine. Like, you know, because we know each other. Yeah, you know, but again, like you said, if I was somewhere and someone called me a crowd or something, I'd be like, okay. Now, normally I don't care about that stuff. Like, I joke about it all the time. It doesn't offend me. But if I know that it's coming from a place of hate, then I'm going to put the brakes on and be like, all right, come on. What in the world? What did I do? So there is a difference. And, you know, again, it's just familiarity with the person. So, like, I wouldn't walk up to, you know, an old person and be like, wow, you got so many grooves and wrinkles in your face. I want to put it onto a record player and see what comes out. You know, like, I wouldn't just randomly say that to some old person. But if, you know, if it was my grandma or something, I might do that. Be like, what do you got? Some Perry Como on there? But so just keep that in mind, dear listeners, all 14 of you. I think it's good that we can joke about it. I think it's, you know, race and whatnot is just what makes us unique, and we can joke and tease about it. But remember that it has to be coming from a place of love and with someone you know. Don't just walk up to a random person and say some crazy stuff.
Oh, yeah, that was another thing, too. Like, going to Asia, I could find clothes that actually fit me.
Yeah, I'll bet that had to be fun, right?
That part was nice. But then I noticed in Japan, they would make their sizes extremely... make it make you feel good. I think the specific instance I remember was in Japan. And it was like this really flowy shirt, and it was an X small. I was like, oh, cool. I can wear an X small because I haven't worn an X small in a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the next couple sizes back, I was just like going through. It was like extra, extra small. Extra, extra, extra small. And then like the X's kept appearing, not like pornography X's, but like extra small. I'm like, are you trying to make people feel better that they're wearing like a super X small? I'm like, I don't get it. Like, there's something wrong. Because, like, okay, first of all, Japanese women most of them tend to be stick thin anyway, and they wear all these like flowy garments. Like, I don't get it. You're not showing off your body, but you feel super happy that you're wearing like a triple X small.
Yeah. Whereas here's the opposite. It starts going to single, double, triple L.
Yep.
Yeah. Good old McDonald's. Thanks for that.
Yep.
But yeah. So that was awesome.
But yeah, I guess I've taken advantage of like the small sizes and stuff. So like say when women's clothing goes on sale, it's usually the extreme sizes that are left.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, I can wear the small stuff. The one thing I do like is buying some of like the nicer jackets. For instance, like Patagonia. I can wear kid sizing. So I don't have to pay an arm and a leg for women's sizing. I can wear the kid sizes as I can save a bunch of money.
Yeah.
I've done that with a lot of jackets actually. I think I've done it with like snowboarding pants too. I would wear like the boys like extra large or whatever it is, like the kid size 16 or 18.
Yeah.
I fit into that. I'm like, I'm going to save a bunch of money. It still does the same thing. So I don't care.
Doesn't that kind of enrage you though, that like kids stuff is usually less expensive than adults? I mean, I know people will be like, well, it's smaller, but
no,
at the same time,
kids taller than me. Like junior high kids. I'm like, I am really small. Oh, speaking of small, I think I posted on Facebook, but I'll tell you anyway. My daughter was like, "You look like a teenager." I was like, "Oh, thanks," because the way I was dressed with the hoodies and just dressing down. She's not used to seeing me that because I'm usually dressed up for like real work and stuff. Yeah. But being at home, I dressed a little bit down. And then she's like, "You know what? Since you look like a teenager, you don't look like an adult. But if you're a little bit taller, you would look more like an adult." Wow.
So you're even getting it from your own daughter. That's
stating
awesome.
The obvious, man, that I'm really short.
Well, so I was going to wait on this, but yeah, I kind of want to hit it now since we're having a little bit of fun. So because things were getting pretty heavy there, I wanted to do a quick lightning round with you about Asian stereotypes. Okay. And just to see like what you think of them, if you're like, yes, absolutely, or no, that's stupid, or where in the world did you hear that? So stereotypically, a lot of times people say that Asians are bad drivers. How do you feel about that?
Oh, in LA, definitely true. The Asian females are the worst. I see that, and I try to not be that. But people would joke around, it's like, "Oh, you're the typical Asian." No, the worst ones are the ones in like behind the minivans or the big SUVs, where they can barely see over the wheel.
That's what I was just gonna say. It's so funny because a lot of women that I know would be like, "Oh, I like driving a big SUV because I feel so safe because I'm sitting up higher." I'm like, that's the complete opposite. Your center of gravity is so much higher. You're more likely to roll. And they're like, no, but I feel safer. I'm like, no, you just feel like you're driving a tank. But okay. Yeah.
So before the cameras on vehicles, I mean, we all use our mirrors for like awareness and like where we're at like parking, right? And so my center of gravity was low because I was used to driving a sedan, right? Yeah. I didn't want a bigger vehicle because I don't want to be out of control and fulfill that stereotype. So I wanted to stay in my my small size vehicle. But yeah, and even I will judge like on the freeway, like if this driver is not driving so well and we'll pass them, and I'll look at who the driver is, like, oh, typical Asian female. I'm bad for doing that, but it is true. I try not to do that though, for me.
No, Jess does that too. Sometimes she's like, ugh, it's a woman in an SUV. That's why. I'm like, oh, you killed me. Oh, look, all right. So for the next one, highly intelligent / good at math.
The ones I know, yes. But there are dumb Asians who are not good at math.
Okay.
I have seen shirts. I forget what it was, but basically they were trying to disprove all the Asian stereotypes. Like, not all Asians are good at math.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean,
for the ones I do know, they are good at math.
Yeah. I wonder if that kind of stereotype happened because, I mean, you hear a lot about like cram school and stuff like that. And Japan, and like their classes, their school year is much longer than us and things like that. And I don't know if they put a higher kind of token or whatever on it comes to education. Maybe that's why or what. But no, that's definitely funny. And when we talked about that earlier, and you were like, I am not good at math. Poor Amy. So this one I thought was interesting. Weird / different fashion sense. I know you talked about how, sometimes you see girls like looking like anime characters or stuff like that, but like, do you notice anything strange when it comes to fashion?
I know for me, I have no sense of fashion at all. I'm an engineer. I have noticed it, but it's not something that I would do. I have seen it on, I think it's more the younger generation though.
Yeah.
But the more maybe my age or like older generation.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen so many mismatched older Asian women. They just think it looks nice, and I let it go.
Yeah,
do
that's
your
what
thing.
I mean. Like...
Yeah, it's the older Asians will wear a lot of mismatched stuff, and they think it looks good, and I'll just let it be. But it's definitely the younger ones are definitely into the more trendy or like the social influencers, that type of thing, into the whole makeup and the clothing. I think it's a generation thing. Okay.
And the last one, you and I are going to have a good one with this one. You ready? Okay. Obsession with Hello Kitty.
I didn't like it growing up, but I see it with like everyone else. Like my sister liked it.
Yeah.
No, but I like the other Sanrio characters instead.
I was going to say, your favorite was Kiropi, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, you remember. That's also.
Because every time I see Kiropi, I'm like, oh my God, it's Amy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Kiropi. Yeah. I think the reason why I didn't like Hello Kitty, because so many girls liked Hello Kitty, so I wanted to find something different. And so, I mean, I've always done stuff different anyway, so that's why I like Kiropi, and I still do.
Yeah. No, he's awesome. Wait, he, right?
I call it a he.
Okay, well, it's a he for us then. Yeah. If we're wrong, just let us know, because I'd love to get an email. And I think you know that I like Hello Kitty, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Some would say obsessed, and it might be true because I bought a Hello Kitty guitar that was a limited run. Did I ever show you that?
No, but I heard about it on a previous recording, and I thought that was pretty awesome.
Yep, I've got it hanging on my wall. It's a black Squire, and I love that thing. The fret or the pick guard is actually Hello Kitty. It's not a sticker, and it was a limited run that was made for Target for holidays, and I found they are actually going online up to $1,000 right now, which I thought was disgusting. I just took a screenshot of it and sent it to my friend last night when we were talking about it, and he was like, I didn't even get that much for my Les Paul, which those are expensive guitars, but since it was a limited run, I found this at a pawn shop, and it was $110. And I looked up to the guy, and I was like, it's got a little bit of, wear on it. Can I give you 90? And he's like, yeah, it's fine. I was like, sweet.
Oh, I totally would have lowballed him and said 50.
I know. I thought about it, and I thought, $20 is still...
I can add to your Asian stereotypes.
Okay.
They're super cheap, and they're the worst tippers.
Really?
I saw my dad do it. I've seen my other relatives do it. Yeah, they're pretty horrible tippers. Them being super cheap about stuff. And I think it has to do with them, how, the struggle when they first came over. Yeah. And so, to be frugal, I understand that. But if you're doing a little bit better now, don't fulfill that stereotype.
Don't skimp. Yeah.
I have done it where I looked at the bill and I saw the tip. I would put more money in before I leave, just because. I mean, I understand what it takes to be in the service industry, and like I was a server once before too. Right.
Yeah. That's something I think everybody should do. Either work retail or work the food industry. I think that should be, armed forces, sure, but let's put them out in the actual workforce so that way they can see how the general public is. And then I think you'd see a lot of people acting a lot different. Mm-hmm. I did 20 years of retail before I got into my IT job, and I'm telling you right now, that was some rough stuff.
I think I did 3 before I had to quit. That was enough. Yeah, it was 3 years.
No, I tried for years to get out, and then when this opportunity came up, I'm like, thank God. And it's not that, I think I'm above it or anything. It's just I just had enough. So to all you people working retail and restaurants. God bless you. Ugh. Because that's a rough job. Well, what else do you want to talk about? Anything in particular, or you want to just call it a night?
We can call it a night.
Sounds good. Well, I'm going to have you sit here and stare at me on our webcam for just a couple minutes while I go through some boring stuff. So thank you very much for listening. Do me a favor and hop on over to 57percenttrue.com. We actually finally got the links page up, so now you can click on some of this stuff so you can understand and see what we're actually talking about. If you want to follow us, go ahead and give us a click out there on Facebook or Twitter. Let's try that again in English this time. Facebook or Twitter. Handle on that both is going to be at 57% true. Make sure you spell out that percent. Don't use the percent symbol, because if you do, Elon Musk will launch you into space and land you on Mars. So check us out there. We can also give us a couple donations if you like. We are taking donations on Patreon and on Anchor.fm. So if you would like to do that, that would be great. And actually, we got our first donation. I was so happy. So, yay, thank you out there for our donations. We appreciate that. And if you'd like to give us a little bit more, so that way we can quit our IT jobs, that would be fantastic. I think that's pretty much all I got. Is there any last final words you want to say before we sign off?
Don't be mean to Asians. We didn't cause the virus. I think that's one of the signs that sums it up. I am not a virus.
Yeah. I haven't seen that, but now I gotta go look for it.
Yep.
So yeah, the entire episode I think is actually gonna be the culture thing that I usually do at the end. Just be nice. Alright? Stop being a jerk. Hashtag Stop Asian Hate. That was actually posted on our Twitter page the other night, so follow that. Do some good stuff. If you see someone doing something stupid, make them stop within reason. All right, I'm not telling everybody to go out there and be vigilantes. Be nice. For the love of God, we're all going through a pandemic and everything else, so let's just be nice to each other. Well, thank you very much, Amy, for being on. I appreciate it. Hope everyone out there enjoyed it. Again, my name is Jason, and give me a closing phrase.